Rhonda Ross, the eldest daughter of legendary singer Diana Ross, spent most of her childhood believing that her father was.
Did you know that Diana Ross kept a major family secret for years, one that changed everything about her daughter's identity? What exactly was the truth behind Rhonda's real father, and why did Diana wait so long to reveal it? Join us as we dive into this surprising story and uncover the details behind one of Motown's biggest secrets, the making of Diana Ross. Before she became one of the most iconic figures in music history, Diana Ross was simply a young girl named Diane. Born on March 26, 1944 in Detroit, Michigan, she was the second oldest of 6 children. Her parents, Fred and Ernestine Ross, worked hard to provide for their family. Life wasn't always easy, but Diane was a bright, confident child who stood out, even among her many siblings. She loved performing and showing off her talents, and it was clear from early on that she had big dreams. However, her childhood was far from carefree. When Diana was just 7 years old, her mother became very sick. Ernestine was diagnosed with tuberculosis, a serious disease that was life-threatening at the time. Because of the illness, the family made a heartbreaking decision. Diana and her siblings were sent away from Detroit to live with their grandparents in Bessemer, Alabama, while their mother recovered. This was a big change for a young girl. Moving from a busy northern city to the slower pace of the South was difficult, especially being so far away from her parents. It was in the Brewster Douglas projects that something amazing began to take shape. Diana lived near 2 girls who would change her life forever, Florence Ballard and Mary Wilson. Florence had a powerful voice and a natural talent for leading a group, and she had recently started putting together a singing group called the Primettes. The group was meant to be a sister act to the Primes, a male group that included Future Temptations members. Florence recruited Mary Wilson, and soon after they asked Diana Ross to join. Diana, already interested in singing, jumped at the chance. She had always wanted to be a star, and this felt like the beginning of something real. The girls started practicing together and performing wherever they could, school talent shows, community events, and local parties. They were young, but they were serious. They worked hard on their harmonies, their stage presence, and their outfits. They had big dreams, and those dreams led them straight to someone who could help them, Smokey Robinson. Smokey wasn't just another guy from the neighborhood. He had already made a name for himself in the music business and was signed to a brand new label in Detroit called Motown Records. And, as it turned out, Smokey had a past with Diana. They had dated briefly, and Diana used that connection to try to get an audition for the Primettes at Motown. Smokey agreed to help, but he had one condition. If he was going to introduce them to Motown's founder, Berry Gordy, then the Primettes would have to let him borrow their guitarist to play in his band, The Miracles. It wasn't ideal, but they agreed. This was their shot, and they weren't going to miss it over something small. When the day of the audition came, Diana and the Primettes were full of hope. They walked into the Hitsville, USA building, where Motown had its recording studio and offices, expecting a big break. They sang for Berry Gordy, the man who held their future in his hands. But the meeting didn't go as they had imagined. Gordy listened to them, then told them that they were too young. He said they should come back after they graduated from high school. It was a huge letdown. Most people would have given up, but not Diana. She wasn't going anywhere. Instead of walking away, she and the other girls kept showing up at the studio. They offered to sing backup, clap on tracks, and do anything else that would get them noticed. They refused to fade into the background. It was just the beginning, but Diana Ross was already making moves that would change her life forever. From no-hit supremes to pop royalty. After their first meeting with Berry Gordy didn't go as planned, Diana Ross and her group didn't give up. They were still teenagers, but their focus and drive were rare. The girls, Diana Ross, Mary Wilson, Florence Ballard, and later Barbara Martin, spent all their free time hanging around Motown's headquarters, known as Hitsville, USA. They would show up after school, on weekends, and even during the summer. They offered to do anything, sing background vocals, clap, or even just run errands. They were determined to be part of the Motown family. Their persistence slowly paid off. They became familiar faces at the studio. Even though they hadn't signed a deal yet, they were gaining experience. They watched older acts record songs, worked with producers, and learned the ins and outs of the music business just by being there. Finally, in early 1961, their dedication was rewarded. Berry Gordy signed them to Motown. At that time, they changed their name from the Primettes to something simpler and more fitting for a girl group, the Supremes. The girls were excited and hopeful, but their journey was just beginning, and it wasn't smooth. From 1961 to 1963, the Supremes released several singles, but none of them were hits. Song after the song failed to make an impact. While other Motown acts like the Miracles, the Marvelettes, and Marvin Gaye were climbing the charts, the Supremes were stuck. In fact, people around the label began calling them the No-Hit Supremes. This nickname hurt. It was meant as a joke, but it reminded the girls that they were falling behind. Some producers even avoided working with them, believing they didn't have what it took to succeed. But again, Diana and the others didn't give up. They kept rehearsing, recording, and pushing forward. Berry Gordy was watching closely. He saw something special in Diana Ross. Her voice wasn't the strongest in a traditional sense. Florence Ballard, for example, had a deeper and more powerful tone, but Diana had a unique sound. Her voice was clear, soft, and very emotional. It cut through the music and connected with people. On top of that, Diana had a natural stage presence. She was confident, graceful, and stylish. Gordy believed she could be the star. Eventually, he made a bold choice. He decided to make Diana Ross the lead vocalist of the Supremes. This caused some tension within the group, especially with Florence Ballard, who had once seen herself as the lead. But Gordy was firm in his decision. He believed this change would take the Supremes to the next level. He was right. In 1964, everything changed. The Supremes released a new single called Where Did Our Love Go? At first, the group didn't love the song. It felt simple, and Diana thought it didn't suit her voice. But when it hit the radio, the public felt differently. The song took off like wildfire. It climbed to #1 on the Billboard charts and stayed there for weeks. Finally, the Supremes had a hit. From that moment on, the group's career skyrocketed. Where Did Our Love Go was followed by a string of hits, including Baby Love, Come See About Me, Stop, In the Name of Love, and Back in My Arms Again. All of these songs went to #1, making the Supremes the most successful girl group in American music history. They were no longer the no-hit Supremes. They were Motown's top act, and Diana Ross was quickly becoming a superstar. Their fame wasn't limited to just the United States. The Supremes became international sensations. They toured around the world and appeared on top television shows like The Ed Sullivan Show, and were featured in magazines and newspapers. They were young, beautiful, and incredibly talented. Their songs spoke to millions, and their popularity kept growing. But behind the glamorous image, they worked hard to perfect their performances. Motown was known for its artist development department, often called Motown's finishing school. The Supremes were trained in everything from how to walk and talk to how to dress and interact with the press. They practiced their dance routines daily and learned stage movements by watching other famous acts, like the Temptations and the Marvelettes. They even studied live performances by white artists like the Beatles to understand what captured a crowd's attention. The power couple behind the curtain. As the Supremes rose to stardom in the mid-1960s, so did Diana Ross's relationship with Motown founder Berry Gordy. Their bond was complicated. On one hand, Gordy was her mentor and the man who helped guide her career. On the other, they were romantically involved, a connection that added another layer of power and tension within the group. Berry Gordy saw something special in Diana. He believed she had star potential beyond the Supremes. He admired her talent, her drive, and her unique voice. As her producer and manager, he gave her more opportunities and attention than he gave the other members of the group. As her romantic partner, he was personally invested in her success. This combination of personal and professional closeness created resentment among the rest of the group, especially Florence Ballard, who had originally helped start the Supremes and saw herself as the lead in the beginning. Many people at Motown, and in the media, noticed that Diana was being pushed more than the others. She stood front and center during performances, got the most camera time, and was the voice on most of their biggest hits. While this made the group successful, it also created tension behind the scenes. There were constant whispers about favoritism and politics at Motown. Some rumors went even further. People said Diana might have been involved romantically not just with Berry Gordy, but also with other powerful men at Motown, including songwriter Smokey Robinson and producer Brian Holland. Whether these stories were true or just gossip, they fed into the belief that Diana was strategically using her relationships to move ahead. The downfall of Florence Ballard. No one felt the impact of Diana's promotion more deeply than Florence Ballard. She was one of the original founders of the group, and she had always been proud of her powerful voice and natural charisma. But once Diana was chosen as the lead singer, Flo's role started to shrink. She went from singing lead on early tracks to barely getting solos at all. Her confidence began to break down. Over time, Florence became deeply unhappy. She felt betrayed by the group, by Berry Gordy, and even by Diana. She believed she was being pushed out of something she helped build. As her personal and professional frustrations grew, her behavior changed. She began missing rehearsals and performances. She started drinking more heavily, which affected her voice and her stage presence. She was sometimes described as difficult or emotional, and that only made things worse. Instead of getting support from Motown, Florence was labeled a problem. Her issues were not handled with care. In 1967, she was officially removed from the Supremes. She was replaced by a new singer, Cindy Birdsong, and the group was renamed Diana Ross and the Supremes. The name change made it clear who the star was now, and it added to Florence's pain. After her firing, Florence tried to rebuild her career. She signed a solo deal with ABC Records and hoped to make a comeback, but it didn't work out. She released a few singles, but they didn't sell well. She struggled with poor management, bad contracts, and continued personal issues. Her financial situation got worse. At one point, she was living on welfare and barely making ends meet. In 1971, Florence filed a massive $8.7 million lawsuit against Motown and Berry Gordy. She claimed they had pushed her out unfairly and blocked her from finding success. But the case was eventually dismissed. She didn't win any money or support from the court. Florence's health also began to fail. Years of drinking, stress, and emotional trauma took a toll on her body. She gained weight, had trouble with her kidneys, and suffered from depression. In 1976, she gave her last public performance. A year later, on February 22, 1976, Florence Ballard died from a heart attack caused by a coronary thrombosis. She was just 32 years old. Her death shocked many fans and saddened those who knew her story. Florence Ballard had once been a shining star full of promise, but she died broke, sick, and largely forgotten by the music industry she helped shape. It wasn't until years later that people began to truly understand her impact on the Supremes and the pain she went through after losing it all. The story of the Supremes is not just about fame and success, it's also about power struggles, broken friendships, and the cost of ambition. Diana Ross became one of the biggest stars in the world, but Florence Ballard's story reminds us that not everyone makes it through the spotlight unharmed. Solo star, solo struggles. By the late 1960s, the Supremes were still a popular group, but the magic that once made them unstoppable was fading. Their sound was starting to feel dated, and internal issues were becoming harder to hide. Berry Gordy, the founder of Motown and Diana Ross's mentor and romantic partner, had a plan to keep the momentum going by making Diana Ross a solo star. For Gordy, this wasn't just a business decision. He believed Diana had the talent, charm, and stage presence to be more than just a member of a girl group. He wanted her to be a major force in music and entertainment, someone who could cross over into film and television, reaching audiences far beyond Motown's typical fan base. Behind closed doors, Gordy had been preparing for this move for a while. He slowly began distancing Diana from the other Supremes, focusing more on building her individual brand. In 1970, it finally happened. Diana Ross officially left the Supremes, and the group continued without her. This was a big moment, not just for Diana, but for the music industry. People wondered if she could make it on her own, without the support of the group that had made her famous. While her music career was transitioning, Diana's personal life was also changing. In 1971, she married music executive Robert Ellis Silberstein. At first, it seemed like a fresh start. Diana gave birth to their first daughter shortly after the wedding. Despite the pressures of fame and motherhood, Diana continued to chase new dreams. Berry Gordy helped her break into film, casting her in the lead role of Lady Sings the Blues, a biopic about jazz legend Billie Holiday. This was a major risk. Diana had never acted in a movie before, but the gamble paid off. Her performance was praised by critics and audiences alike. She earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress, which was a huge achievement for someone with no formal acting background. As her career soared, Diana's personal life began to show signs of trouble. Her marriage to Robert Ellis Silverstein began to suffer. Silverstein reportedly felt like he was living in Diana's shadow. He once said she belonged to Motown, meaning her loyalty was more to the company and Gordy than to him. It was hard for him to compete with the powerful world she was a part of. The marriage ended in divorce in 1977. That same year, Diana attended Florence Ballard's funeral. Ballard had died at just 32, after years of hardship following her dismissal from the Supremes. Many fans and former Motown staff members were upset by how things had turned out for Florence. Diana's presence at the funeral was not welcomed by everyone. Some people saw it as hypocritical, like she was paying respect to someone she had helped push out. The moment marked a shift in how the public viewed Diana. She wasn't just the glamorous superstar anymore, she was also seen as someone who had benefited from the pain of others. In 1981, Diana made a bold move. She rejected a new contract offer from Berry Gordy and chose to leave Motown altogether. She signed with RCA Records for a record-breaking $20 million deal, one of the biggest in music history at the time. The decision ended her longtime connection with Gordy, both professionally and personally. It was the end of an era and the beginning of something new. The Gene Simmons Saga. In the early 1980s, Diana Ross entered one of the most dramatic chapters of her personal life. She started a relationship with Gene Simmons, the famous bass player from the rock band Kiss. But this wasn't just any romance, it came with major controversy. At the time, Gene Simmons was dating singer Cher. Cher and Diana Ross had once been friends, and both were major stars in their own right. The two women had supported each other publicly and had even appeared together at events. So when news broke that Diana was seeing Gene Simmons behind Cher's back, it became a huge scandal. The media jumped all over the story. Headlines painted Diana as a man-stealer and accused her of betraying Cher. Paparazzi followed her constantly, trying to get photos of her and Gene together. The tension between Cher and Diana became a hot topic in magazines and tabloids. Cher didn't hold back either. She gave interviews expressing her disappointment and heartbreak. For Diana, the scandal added pressure to an already intense life in the spotlight. Despite all of this, Diana and Gene continued their relationship for a few years. They were even considered one of Hollywood's most unexpected couples. But the chaos and attention eventually took a toll. In 1983, the relationship ended. There was no dramatic breakup in public, but it was clear the romance had burned out. Diana moved on, but the story stuck with her. It reminded the public that behind her glamorous image was a woman facing real personal challenges and consequences. New love and a tragedy. After years of public relationships and breakups, Diana's next love story seemed more private and unexpected. In the mid-1980s, she met Arne Naess Jr., a wealthy Norwegian businessman and mountain climber. He wasn't part of the music or entertainment industry, and their relationship started quietly, away from the press. Arne was different from the men Diana had dated before. He had a calm, grounded presence, and they connected on a personal level. Their romance moved quickly. In 1985, they got married in a ceremony that brought together friends and family from all over the world. For a while, it looked like Diana had finally found peace and stability. She moved to Europe to be with Arne and focused on her family. Together, they had two sons, Evan and Ross. Diana took a step back from the fast pace of Hollywood and enjoyed a more domestic life. She still worked on music and performed, but at a slower, more relaxed rhythm. They had two sons, and Diana also became stepmother to Arne's children from a previous relationship. For a while, life was peaceful, but under the surface, things were changing. After several years together, Diana learned that Arne had been unfaithful. He was having an affair, and it wasn't just a rumor. He had fathered a child with another woman during their marriage. This wasn't just a private betrayal. It would soon become very public. Diana was shocked when Arna announced their separation in a media interview. According to several reports, Diana hadn't even known he planned to go public. She was heartbroken. The pain of the betrayal and the way it was revealed cut deep. They eventually divorced in 2000 after 14 years of marriage. It was a devastating chapter for Diana. She had truly believed this marriage would last. The quiet family life she had worked so hard to build was suddenly gone. After the collapse of her marriage, Diana began to struggle more openly with personal issues. Behind the glamour and the fame, she was facing emotional pain that she could no longer hide. In 2002, Diana checked into a rehabilitation center to seek help for substance abuse. At the time, it was reported that she was dealing with alcohol dependency and needed support. Unfortunately, her first stay in rehab didn't last long. She left early, before completing the full program. A second attempt was also cut short. Friends and fans were concerned, but Diana didn't speak much publicly about her struggles at the time. That same year, Diana's personal problems became front-page news. In December 2002, she was arrested in Tucson, Arizona, for driving under the influence. What made the incident even more surprising was that Diana was staying at a wellness retreat at the time, supposedly there to rest and recover. She had driven her car under the influence of alcohol and was stopped by police. She failed a field sobriety test and was taken into custody. In court, she was found guilty and sentenced to serve jail time. Although it was a brief sentence, just 2 days behind bars, it marked a low point in her public life. For someone who had always tried to appear strong and in control, the arrest was a shocking and sad moment. It showed just how deeply she was struggling, even if she tried to hide it. In 2004, just 2 years after her arrest, Diana was hit with another heartbreaking event. Her ex-husband, Arne Nice Jr., died in a tragic climbing accident. He had been scaling a mountain in South Africa when he fell more than 300 feet to his death. He was 66 years old. Even though they were no longer married, Diana was devastated by his passing. She had once called him the love of her life, and after his death, she repeated those words in interviews. His loss was not just personal, it was also painful for their children who now had to grow up without their father. Diana mourned Arne deeply. Friends said she became very quiet and withdrawn for a time. She focused on her family and stayed out of the public eye as much as possible. The pain of losing someone she had loved so deeply, even after their marriage had ended, was overwhelming. Rhonda's true father revealed. Before marrying Silberstein, Diana had been in a romantic relationship with Berry Gordy, the powerful founder of Motown Records. Their relationship had ended just a short time before she met and married Robert, but their connection had left something permanent, a child. The baby growing inside Diana was Gordy's. Diana chose not to tell Robert the truth. She was afraid that he would leave her if he found out that the child wasn't his. She also didn't want to lose the chance at having a stable family, so she made the painful decision to stay silent. She hoped that if she loved and supported her new husband, they could raise the child together and put the past behind them. When Rhonda Suzanne Silberstein was born, Robert accepted her completely. He raised her as his own daughter and gave her his last name. From the outside, no one would have known the truth. Robert treated Rhonda with love and care, just like any father would. He never made her feel different or unwanted. Still, the secret caused pressure behind the scenes. Even though Diana had moved on with Robert, her past with Berry Gordy continued to cast a shadow over their marriage. Over time, tensions began to build. The emotional weight of the hidden truth likely played a role in the couple's problems. By 1977, their marriage came to an end. Rhonda was only 6 years old at the time. She didn't know anything about the situation that had helped break her parents apart. To her, they were just mom and dad, and their divorce didn't come with any clear explanation. Years went by before Diana found the courage to tell Rhonda the truth. Finally, when Rhonda turned 13, Diana decided it was time. She sat down with her daughter for a serious, emotional conversation. In that moment, she revealed that Berry Gordy was Rhonda's biological father. Robert, while loving and devoted, was not her real father by blood. For any teenager, this kind of news could be overwhelming, but Rhonda didn't react with anger or confusion. Instead, she felt a sense of relief. She had always noticed that she was a bit different from her younger sisters, both in appearance and personality. Learning about her real father helped things finally make sense. The truth gave her a better understanding of who she was. Rather than tearing her apart, the confession helped her find a deeper connection to herself and her background. After learning the truth, Rhonda began to build a relationship with Berry Gordy. He was now able to openly be a part of her life, not just as a family friend, but as her biological father. Despite the complex situation, there was no public anger or bitterness from Robert Ellis Silberstein. In fact, he continued to be present in Rhonda's life and stayed a father figure to her. Rhonda grew up with two important father figures. She has spoken respectfully and lovingly about both men. She recognizes that Robert raised her and gave her stability, while Berry gave her life and a sense of identity. She doesn't choose between them. Instead, she acknowledges the unique role each one played in her life. Sometimes, the hardest truths can lead to healing and connection. And for Diana Ross and her daughter Rhonda, that proved to be true. If you found this interesting, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next video.